Koka sunarai sunarayanti. 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 Koka sunarai sunarayanti.
Hello, hi, welcome to this new episode of the Mango TV podcast. Today I'm very excited to have Batuhan Bintas. With a passion to educate the upcoming generations, Batuhan has been a technology enthusiast since his first meeting with computers at age 3. He's an animator and full stack extended reality developer with a deep understanding of artificial intelligence technologies. Batuhan is the founder and CEO of Imaginatrix Studios, London Istanbul-based XR studio that design augmented, mixed, and virtual reality technologies. Company focuses on educating the upcoming generations about the responsible use of technology and inspires them to become the innovator of the future. Batuhan actively guest lectures, runs workshops at University of Arts London and University of Greenwich. He's a keynote speaker and has spoken at renowned events such as Boom Festival, Ozora Festival, Breaking Convention, and Occulture. Also, a psychedelic science enthusiast and a Cyberdelic. I'm salivating about that. We live in a time where science fiction is becoming science fact. Batuhan elevate upcoming generations and teaches about the responsible use and innovation of technology. So we write beautiful science fiction where we wish to live in. Welcome, Batuhan.
Thank you. What an intro. Thank you very much, Giancarlo.
You forgot another important event where you spoke, which was Regenerate X in Bodrum.
Precisely where we met, actually, right?
Yeah, where we met. I was immediately drawn to your expertise on what I think are some of the most interesting topics nowadays, things like artificial intelligence and psychedelic, and also community building. Your passion for festival, and yeah, we've been trying to see each other socially now for several months, but it didn't work out. How was Merlin Sheldrake documentary?
It was very good. It was very good. It was an amazing weekend with Merlin and all our friend group. So on Saturday we celebrated. We went to IMAX. We watched Merlin's new film Web of Life. It's a really interesting documentary. It focuses on the mycelium network in general, and surprisingly doesn't even mention psychedelic mushrooms once.
Wow.
It mainly focuses on the effects of mushrooms and their power on the environment, and brings forth um, it brings a focus on the importance of mycelium network. And I was guessing that like they didn't want to touch on the psychedelic mushrooms, because when once you mention psychedelic mushrooms, they become the main focus of
Yeah.
of everything.
Yeah.
So I'm actually happy that they didn't mention it, and I'm sure people in the crowd and people that watched the entire movie itself, it was magical without having to mention psychedelic mushrooms. The movie has a lot of like microscopic life how they call of mycelium network. So for that, it was like an incredible how they call journey, like visual journey. After the event, we were invited back to Sheldrake's house. So we were there with Rupert Sheldrake, Cosmo Sheldrake, Merlin Sheldrake, and gosh, it was a good party till 8 a.m.
Yes, I'm sure. I'm sure.
Yeah,
We will put in the show notes a link with Merlin's book, and maybe the movie if it's going to be available, or where they're going to tell where it's going to be available. But going back to us, so tell us a little bit about your coming of age. Where did you grow up, and how did you develop this passion for technology and psychedelics?
well, I mean, they always coexisted, since I think the culture I was born in is really has really impact on my, upbringing and my interest in both technology and psychedelics. So I was born and raised in Turkey, and at a really young age, my Sufi grandmother, she raised us with the belief that we are surrounded by different dimensions, and each dimension has their own intelligences. And she told us about genies, genies in Islam. So she told me that like there are ways to communicate with these beings, there are ways to contact with those dimensions, but one must be very careful when you're doing it.
Why you have to be careful? Because they can be malevolent.
Yes, that as well, but also like not only them being malevolent, but also like the human ego interfering into like trying to abuse their power for their own personal gain. So my grandma always like said that you need to be spiritually protected, and also spiritually you need to know yourself when if you want to embark on such a journey. So when I first experienced psychedelics at age 18, I was initially expecting to see flying pink elephants. That was like the vision that the how they call it, the TV showed me. But instead, I found out that wow, I was like I ended up in the dimension that my grandmother told me, because my grandma was always telling me that like a curtain, Allah put a curtain in front of our eyes so that we don't get confused. And she said there are ways to open that curtain. I was like, okay, eating mushroom is definitely one way to open that curtain, and that's been my journey.
How old were you when you did your mushroom?
18, yeah, yeah.
Do you think it was a big dose? Do you remember?
Oh, yeah, it was a huge dose.
Like 5 grams?
Yeah, definitely 5 grams. But not only that, we also like, smoked cannabis on top of it.
Yeah.
We were just like it was five of us, and then five of us who just met at the high school, and we were like pretending to be cool people. And then we were like saying that like, oh yeah, I do psychedelics every day, or I do LSD every day. And then we all found some mushrooms, ate it, and then we found out that it was every single one of our first time doing it. So then we were like lost in the jungle.
In Turkey?
No, this was in a different country.
Hmm.
Yeah, and we were like lost in a forest, and it was beautiful, really, really beautiful, life-changing experience. And then after that experience, for one whole year, I didn't touch anything, even alcohol, because I was just so mesmerized by the experience that like I was in awe. Like I remember for the following 3 months, I was like, what was that?
Yeah, yeah. You develop like a sense of reverence that you don't feel like you want to go back until you're fully integrated and digested the experience, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
So my interest with technology also came from this similar, around the same time as well. So at age 19, I experienced a difficulty. So I lived in Italy for a year, and then I lived in Denmark for 2 years. But in my second year in Denmark, because Turkey is not part of European Union, I was in my second year visa application was refused, and my passport got stamped in the middle of my studies in my second year, and I was deported from Denmark. But luckily, my high school, they allowed me, because I've done nothing wrong besides being Turkish, they allowed me to continue education over the internet. So I actually did internet education before it was cool. Like this was 2012, 2013, and I had to spend 3 months in Turkey and then go back for my exams. And during those 3 months, I will wake up every morning, connect to the internet, and connect to my class. And this literally made me question. I was like, wow, like my body is not allowed into that country for 3 months because of the bureaucracies between countries, but my mind can travel through internet. Like I can literally mentally be in the classroom but not physically. So I was like, wow, this is the power of the internet. Like that's literally where my passion comes from. So right now I am working on a project. I'm running a project with the organization called Art Solution, and we are hoping to take virtual reality experiences to refugee camps in the summer together with United Nations. And our aim is to help refugee kids get out of the refugee camps with the power of the internet.
Amazing.
Yeah, because refugee kids are like stuck in the refugee camps, and we want to at least give them an opportunity through which they can experience what's life like outside of the refugee camps.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I never thought like from that angle. That's such an empowering approach, right? Where government and discriminations and law and regulation can regulate the movement of bodies, but through the internet, nobody can regulate the movement of mind. So you had this transformative experience with psychedelic. You felt this different dimension that your mother from a Sufi tradition was telling you. Then you discovered the power of the internet. And so then these two things together informed your next steps in life? Or then what happened after your degree?
Well, after my degree, I then moved to London. I continued studying here. Again, that summer I experienced another visa difficulties, and then but then I passed that, and then I started studying art and then animation. And then during when I was studying animation, like I mean, the word animation comes from anime, like breathing life into things, and that's what you do with animations. I studied hand-drawn animation, so like when you spend like it's a really painstaking process of like having to draw like 24 frames to create 1 second. For 10 seconds animation, you need to draw 240 frames. You need to paint them. So when I was going through that painstaking process, I was always questioning like if the characters I was animating knew about me. And then I remember once like I was animating after like days and nights of animating these two characters. I stopped for a second. I literally looked up. I was like, what if I'm being animated? Like like how can I know that like if there is it's like this one big inception. And then during university, I also like they call experimented with psychedelics. I was part of the Imperial College's psychedelic research on dimethyltryptamine in 2016. That was a totally life-changing experience. And then during my university, I wrote my thesis in 2017 about internet becoming a self-conscious entity. So I was questioning, that what is to be alive? Like, what makes us conscious beings? What makes us define that we are alive? And what if internet has already developed some sort of awareness that we don't understand? Because back in 2017, as far as I know, there was 500 billion devices connected to the internet and the machine learning. And it's been 7 years since then. I mean, back then we didn't even have like commercial use case of artificial intelligence. Like right now, you have hundreds of different AI apps coming out every day, and that I found that really fascinating. And I was like, I was questioning like, are we becoming like some sort of like one big hive mind? And then I started actually doing like research on the origins of internet. As you can tell, like internet really allowed me, bypass the obstacles that life threw at me, and because of my nationality, because of my past. But like, I started doing intensive research to the origins of internet, and what I found, which is which blew my mind, was that um, you know people who were inspired by psychedelic experience, like Steve Jobs. They were like hippies of 1960s who would eat mushrooms or take LSD. So those hippies were actually the ones that created computer networks and personal computers. They even claim that Silicon Valley people said that the human closeness that was felt under the influence of psychedelics was one of the main catalysts in creation of internet and personal computers. And what really fascinates me is that in the nature, what connects the entire, nature is mycelium network, wood wide web, as Merlin Sheldrake will put it. So the wood wide web that connects the entire, ecosystem has produced a fruiting body, which is the mushroom, that inspired humans to create a network to connect humanity. And I find this, like deeply fascinating and deeply, like a parallel. When people think that, technology is not natural, I always give this example.
But so maybe let's repeat it because maybe this is not familiar language. So Rupert's he call it wood wide web from the wood
Wide web, yeah.
where the mycelium grow, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So he says that nature gave us the wood wide web through the mycelium,
Hmm.
and then with the spore, with the flower of the wood wide web, which are the mushroom, they inspired humans to create the World Wide Web.
Yes, precisely.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I find that really, really fascinating. Also, like if you think about this, like mushrooms are world's oldest living being. They have survived so many different cataclysms. Like the oldest living being. Like the oldest mycelium fossils were found in the lava. They were like 2.4 billion years old.
Wow.
It was also mentioned in Merlin's documentary as well. They were found in South Africa. So what mushrooms do is also they live off the dead matter. Like they break down all the dead matter. At some point in our lives, we also gonna be our bodies are gonna be broken down by mushrooms, and that's a natural cycle. And in their 2.4 billion long journey, mushrooms, like if we found a way to hack the human body or like the animal body, because when you digest all these human bodies, you mushrooms perhaps have been studying the human biology, and it found ways to biologically alter the human computer, let's call it the body, and allow it to connect to altered states of consciousness. I found that deeply, deeply magical.
Fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a technologist. I always reverse engineer things and try to understand them.
Super interesting. And what you said about mycelium decompose and basically the mycelium, create life from death.
Yeah.
This is incredible, like the vulture. Okay, so this is fascinating, but just to go back a little bit on the chronology, just to find some order. So you were animating, creating all these different image, and your background and your psychedelic experience made you believe that maybe there's a deeper interaction with reality. We are not just this detached objective observer, but we might be part of the whole thing. And then where did you go from there? From your animation day, what happened then?
After I graduated, I formed my company, and then I started, doing freelance work. But then, where I see what I'm really good at is like reminding. I see myself somewhere in between the tech world and the natural world. In the technology world, people can easily turn a blind eye on nature, or or think that like humans are over everything. Whereas in the people in the communities that are around nature, there is also a lot of like how they call taboos around technology. You know, like
Mm.
so I am somewhere in between. I'm the mediator. So I always like bring this kind of thoughts to conversation, and then I'm really good at like showing people the other side of the medallion, and say that like you know everything everything is interconnected. Like I don't like, for example, calling AI artificial intelligence. Who are we to say it's artificial? It is some sort of intelligence. Like what, for example, bees build beehives, and for us, beehives are supernatural. I was giving that example, I think, at the Regenerate X. But like, perhaps when bees go back to the beehive, they think that they built the pinnacle of their civilization, like a pyramid of bees. Maybe for them, beehive is the pinnacle of their civilization, but yet for us, it's supernatural.
You mean for the bees is artificial?
Exactly. For the bees, it can be artificial, but for us, like nothing is artificial. Like because everything around you comes from nature. All the materials, even the computers that we're using, every single material comes from nature, and it will eventually go back to the nature. And also, if you accept the great law of the universe, everything happens according to the great law. Like nothing happens without the permission from the universe. So once you acknowledge that, then you understand who are we to say that something is artificial. When you say something is artificial, literally saying we have the capability of going against the laws of nature. I don't think we do. I think there are laws of nature, and everything exists. Within those paradigms. And this is why I think artificial intelligence as natural as bees building beehive, and we shouldn't be afraid of it. But what we should be afraid of is, I think, is what not afraid, actually cautiously optimistic about the human use case of the tool, because it's such a powerful tool.
But so let's talk a little bit because I think it's probably the first time we mention, or maybe not the first time, but we never really break down this concept of AI. So when did you encounter for the first time, and can you explain it, like you were talking to a 12 years old?
Okay, you mean when I first encountered with AI?
Yes. And how did you integrate it in your work and explain what it is?
I mean, I think, like, to be honest, like it's like a little bit like life, when I don't know when I started living. I'm just in the middle of it. And when it comes to knowledge as well, I'm in the middle of, my AI journey. In fact, you made me curious, like when did I start, get into AI? I don't know. But I've been fascinated by computers since age 3. And in my university years, I watched a movie called Ghost in the Shell. Do you know that one?
No, we'll put a link in the show notes. What is it about?
It's a Japanese anime from
Uh-huh.
1990s. Basically, it's the anime that inspired the Matrix, the making
Oh,
of the
wow.
Matrix. Yeah, and so the anime talks about a criminal called Puppet Master, and then I don't want to spoil the movie, but like for the first half of the movie, they look for a human being. They have cyborgs, they have how they call robots that have some sort of intelligence, and but like some hacker starts getting into their mind and then starts controlling them, and then it's the hacker is called Puppet Master. It's for the first half of the movie, like they're looking for where the Puppet Master is, but in the middle of the movie they acquire the body of the Puppet Master, and then they find out that Puppet Master says that it is the internet that became self-conscious, and then the policemen then go like, no, you're not internet, you're not sentient, you cannot be, we've created you. And then the Puppet Master questions them like, how can you tell me that you exist, when neither philosophy nor science can answer what life is? And that passage, that conversation that I watched there made me really, really question, like, what is to be alive? Because, like, for example, when we always say that when people say, like, oh, AI will never be conscious. Why? Because it's pre-programmed. But so are we, like our life decisions, like, like our childhood memories, from where we come from, like we get programmed, and then for the first half of our lives, we get programmed, then we spend the other half to reprogram ourselves, So we are also pre-programmed as well. So that was my beginning into doing an intensive research into AI, because I think my curiosity for AI is also coming from trying to understand my desire to understand what is to be alive. Like you cannot do AI research, you cannot program AI without finding yourself in this kind of thought patterns, because you're literally forming an intelligence, and then that intelligence, I think AI field is deeply is interesting for everybody, because it is making us question the fundamentals of being alive, fundamentals of life. And again, like, it makes us question, what is the connection between the body and the soul, like, perhaps like what we call as the body. Like, I don't believe the consciousness is generated in the mind. I think it's somewhere else, and this body is just the host. Like, I find it really fascinating that we call it my body. Who are we to say, like, who am I that I'm calling it my body? I say my computer, my friend, and then my body. But who am I that has this body? And then same with AI. Like, an internet can be conscious. That can be the sea of information, and then it can manifest itself, like connect to different, digital bodies, like digital robotic bodies, to interact with the physical world. Like, another thing that made me really, really curious about the internet, actually, I just remembered that now, was when I was doing a lot of research on the, consciousness, like how from Eastern philosophies to Western religions, like there is one common thing that is, we are one consciousness experiencing itself subjectively, you know like I am you, you are me, but we kind of forget that, we are part of this one big dream. And I was always questioning, like fast forward like 2000 years, if internet becomes a one big self-conscious entity, it's going to be everywhere and it's going to be nowhere, and it's going to be able to connect to different digital bodies and experiencing itself subjectively. And my question is, perhaps internet will forget that at the core, it's actually one big consciousness that is called the internet. So I'm a practitioner of alchemy, and then my biggest life philosophy is as above, so below. So, so what we see, I think, in the internet and AI creation is actually exactly what is reflected in our well-being, in our, what makes us human. And that's why I'm like deeply fascinated.
Yeah, yeah. So this is super interesting. But let's go one step back a little bit more, down to earth. Okay, let me ask you this. You ask ChatGPT, can you summarize this 2,000-page book?
Mhm.
And like 2 seconds later, you have a very detailed summary. I mean, how can you explain to a 8 years old how does a machine read a book in 2 seconds?
How does it read it? I mean, because it's data. I mean, that's like the thing, because like how the speed in, through which like we process data is slower than how the data is processed on the silicon chips. That's the main difference between biological computers like humans and the digital computers. And machines, it's a little bit like a machine that a human can read one page at a time, right?
Yeah.
A machine can read, hundreds and thousands of pages at a second, at a millisecond, and then it can just, just sum it up into words. When I was I always like give that example of like when I was a kid, I was watching Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and there was a robot from the future in that cartoon show, and then the robot would go to a library and then pick up a book and then just read them, in milliseconds. And I was so jealous of that robot because I always wanted to read that fast. That's how machines do it.
But can you explain this very ignorant question? But because when we use the same word, we say the computer reads, but it's not really reading. It's not absorbing through an optical phenomenon, right? How does the computer, how does ChatGPT ingest all these 2,000 pages? It's not through a mechanism of seeing, right? Can you explain how does the machine acquires all this data?
Well, the machine is trained on the how they call language models and
Uh-huh.
and the data we have such a good AI right now because thanks to you and me and everybody else has been using platforms like messengers, WhatsApp, Instagram, and this over a period of time we've developed huge amounts of data which has been used to fed to artificial intelligence. So the AIs that read your 2,000 page long book are trained on the conversations that we've been having online. So the AI has a library of data that is connected to it, through algorithm, and then it can just connect the meaning of every single word and then in which context they are used.
I see. I see. I see.
It is hard for us to actually comprehend like how it works, and sometimes some AI systems are like black box. Even the developers don't know how they work, but they just work.
But so what we were talking just before going live, what do you think is the intersection of AI and psychedelic? How these two science can be integrated for the human well-being or not?
Well, I have like two visions for the future. Like one is, for example, in the psychedelic, like in the field of psychedelic research, you know, like a person can be given a psychedelic injection, let's say DMT, like the one in Imperial College, and then whilst their brain is attached to the machine, whilst their brain activity is being scanned, that scanner can also be connected to an artificial intelligence, and
Uh-huh.
that AI can read their thoughts and or their brain patterns and generate them visually in virtual reality, generate them in computer. So like imagine 10 doctors trying to study it live, or one AI system, like how you said, like it will take those doctors like a month to read a 2,000 pages long book. Imagine the power of ChatGPT attached to that brain that is experiencing dimethyltryptamine. So some of the local audience would say yes, but psychedelic experience is not just the brain activity, it's not just the visual activity. Yes, I agree, but at least we will uncover one mystery at a time. So that's where I really see psychedelic research going into. In fact, I have a project called Cyber Mushroom, which is a digital mushroom experience in virtual reality. So that was my university finishing project. I always question how can I share my psychedelic trips with people because language is really limiting when it comes to psychedelic journey. And I designed a virtual world where people can upload their trip reports and share it with one another. So this way we could also like create a map of the psychedelic world. So it has currently the virtual world has my personal mushrooms. So I take mushrooms with the intention to meet the mushroom world, and then after that I come back and then program my psychedelic trips into the virtual reality. So I share it with at festivals and conferences. But in the near future, where I see project going is that you pick up a digital mushroom in virtual reality, and that digital mushroom is connected to a virtual reality and an artificial intelligence system. So you talk to the mushroom, and then you tell the mushroom your psychedelic trip, and then suddenly it then generates your how they call psychedelic trip in virtual reality. So this way, people can communicate with each other in a new way. That's where I see the project is going. Another thing that I see is in the near future, we're going to have cyberdelic assisted psychotherapy. So imagine in a virtual reality system that can read your thoughts with an AI system and then generate it in virtual reality. So you would put the headset on and then go back to your childhood, your traumas, your happy moments, your sad moments, and relive them. So for those are the two paths that I see, AI and psychedelics, have in common for mental health.
Yeah, it's fascinating. How did you call the second one? You call it cyberdelic assisted psychotherapy.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, this is fascinating. Okay, so now we're going full on into Mango TV topics. So this idea of global transformation, global healing, and this idea that global transformation comes from personal transformation. So you mentioned two applications of this intersection of AI and psychedelic. One is to using AI to read the scans of people in psychedelics and try to understand what's going on.
Hmm.
And as you know, one of the sponsor of the DMT experiment is a friend of mine, and we're doing a documentary on the whole, on his journey, but also on the experiment. And the reason why he was so the reason why it's so interesting to explore what's happening um, with the extended states DMT is because he's convinced that the vision, the creature, the entities, the energies you see in this DMT world, they're not just product of your fantasies. They're not dreams. They are literally travel journey to different dimensions. And this entity, this creature that you encounter, not only they are real in a different dimension, but you can even make friends with them and interact with them. And if you're good enough or pure enough, and that's, who knows, maybe you can even get help from them for to deal with human affairs. So it's a fascinating experiment. He says that maybe this technology of extended state DMT injection can maybe even compete with NASA.
Precisely. That's exactly what I was going to say. Like,
I know you would like that.
we send astronauts to explore space. We send submarines to explore, deep waters. But if everything is mind, universe is mental, we need to explore the mind. So we need to have psychonauts, psychedelic astronauts that explore, what's on the other side of the whale of reality.
It's fascinating. Okay, let's imagine, we don't have the data interpreted by AI yet. Imperial College is working on the data. There's been, I don't know, maybe 20, 30 volunteers so far. How I was one of those, for me, it was a very personal journey. I remember Ralph Metzner was a dear friend of mine, and when we interviewed him about this experiment, is that he told me the entities that you encounter is your higher self.
Hmm.
And so in a way, nobody knows, but I felt, for me this DMT trip was like an encounter with my higher self, and I had the download of what I need to do to continue with my evolution. But a lot of other psychonauts, lots of people we know, and for people that are curious, there was a panel moderated by Andrew Gallimore, who invented this technology, and Graham Hancock, who's also a psychonaut.
It wasn't that panel.
You were in the panel. Okay, great. So I'm gonna put that in the show note. There were like all the different psychonaut, and they all explain what was for them this experience with the DMT. They all did see different entities and different creature. But so, okay, where am I going with this? I would like you to, okay, imagine, you love science fiction, right? So imagine, just as a, okay, imagine is happening. Imagine you have 50 psychonaut and you have the DMT machine, which is a anesthetic machine, and imagine you have the chat GPT attached to it.
Hmm.
What do you think could be an interpretation of, what do you think would happen in the head of these 50 psychonauts? Where, how this DMT states and this, how describe this world? Imagine you had all the data.
For me, it's like, the channeling that's like the mediums do. So for me, like, to study the psychedelic world, I was telling this to the scientists, Chris Timmerman and David Erizzo back in 2016. I was part of not the DMTX, but they were testing the dosage on us in the early. So I was the guinea pig of guinea pigs. So they were like, I was telling them, like, if you actually, I said this to them in 2016. I was like, if you actually have in the future, you're going to have an AI system that can read our thoughts and then generate them in virtual reality. So imagine, like, you send me to the virtual world, to the DMT world with the DMT injection, constant DMT injection. An AI system scans my brain, all those 40 participants, and then generates what they're experiencing in virtual reality. And if they're having an entity encounter, then not only them, but we can also talk to those entities with a totally sober state of mind, and that could be a way of like communicating. So we send somebody into the world psychedelic world, and through them we connect with the other world entities. Because I also like agree with your friend. I don't think these entities are a creation of our minds. Like, they feel real, at least on the experience. Like, in my personal experience, for example, I in my second DMT experience, I went through, but this is before I got into religion and all that. I went through a tunnel of fractals, and at the end of the tunnel, I saw a elephant-headed deity with with 8 arms. And
Ganesh.
yes, but I didn't know anything about Ganesh. I had no idea whatsoever. But then the interesting thing is, following week, I had this incredible inner voice telling me to go to Camden Town. And Camden Town is a place where is, this, a heavily, culturally inspired by the Indian culture. So I was just walking around the Camden Town, looking around. I was like, why am I here? I could feel something was calling me. And then I saw an elephant-headed being on a drape. I ran into the shop and I asked the owner, and then the owner told me it's Ganesh. Then I started, doing research. Yeah, and I was like, wow, this is quite incredible. Then I started doing a lot of research on the internet, and I found out that I'm not the only psychonaut who experienced it. And every time people report experiencing Ganesh, they always report experiencing him or her at the beginning of the trip. And in the Hinduism, it is believed that Ganesh, removes obstacles. In Hinduism, they also pray Ganesh before they embark on a spiritual journey. I was like, well, what is more spiritual journey than like DMT? So and I had so many countless experiences like that. Like, I met like beings that someone would describe as angels from Christianity. I met, the omnipotent creator Allah from Islam, and I was like, but this is it, like. And actually, when I met that being, it said this is exactly, what you call as prophets, Muhammad, Jesus, Buddha, they all talk about. And And I was like, wow, I was quite, like shocked, and but also it's a feeling that you feel, deep down, that it's there, but almost like when you come back, something gets, like reprogrammed in your mind, so you don't, how do you call, so you get reprogrammed for the physical reality. I totally agree with your friend. Like these beings and entities, I don't think they're just product of our minds. And even if they're product of our minds are doing an amazing job. I think, considering them as a product of our mind is trying to confine this into the realm of the, physical science. I'm pro science, but I don't like when science, everything has to be material. I think, like we need to develop new tools to understand reality. Like we're tool making creatures. Like as we shape tools, they shape our understanding of reality. So up until we discovered telescope, the world was flat, and then we found out about space. Then we discovered microscope and started seeing the unseen world. There were people before the invention of microscope talking to the scientific community about viruses and bacteria, and they were condemned to be, to be silly. And
Yeah.
now, yeah, we developed microscope and everything changed. And I think we are exactly at a similar point where, like, this technology of, brain computer interfaces, artificial intelligence, and psychedelic research is going to create a new tool that is going to fundamentally change our understanding of reality. And it's going to have communications. I mean, if we can invest billions into, exploring space, Graham Hancock says DMT research is less costly. We can invest, 1/10 of that, investment into this, and then actually explore the space.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But this is already happening, this change of paradigm that you're describing from this idea that consciousness is a epiphenomenon of the brain towards this idea that consciousness is not a product of the brain, but is primordial, is like a primordial piece of reality. It's the other way around. In the material scientific in the scientific materialism approach, they think that this big cosmos is a big gigantic clock, and then when the brain reaches a certain amount of complexity, poof, it creates consciousness. And so Rupert Sheldrake makes fun of this scientific materialist, saying that they say, "Give me one free miracle, and then explain everything rationally." um, Whereas, like, now the other view is that consciousness came before, so it's mind that have create matter, not the other way around. And this is already happening. David Bohm had explored that with the implicate order, and then in 2022 the Nobel Prize from quantum physics went to these three Swedish scientists that they prove non-locality. So this idea that on a subatomic level a particle behaves the same at thousands of miles of distance, they already had this proven a little bit with the double slit experiment, that we are not in a mechanical, but we are integral part of reality. So why is all this relevant for us humans? Personally, I feel that if we go into the state of mind of there is a cosmic consciousness, we are part of something infinite, there is different dimension, I feel that first of all, it can humble us and make us focus, maybe not give so much importance to like futility and comparing with other and material accumulation, and it gives you a sense of transcendence and connection with something infinite. Young would say that realization would really help with your mental wellness. And this idea, this concept that on a subatomic level we are all connected, we are all part of something bigger, it just developed pro-social behavior. So I feel that the psychedelic revolution is also bringing a new ontology, less duality, more unity. So this is the first aspect of what you described being the implication of this psychedelic and AI integration. The second one was on a more personal level, this idea that AI and psychedelic can help map your childhood, your traumatic map of childhood, and can help in uncovering blind spots that you might not see on a conscious level. I was discussing that with a friend therapist that is now recording all his sessions and transcribing it with the permit of the clients, of course. And so it start feeding into AI, all these sessions. And so when he's gonna have, I don't know, like hundreds of sessions, and when he's going to be able to upload, the email and the photos and the WhatsApp from the client, then AI will be able to map the last 10, 20 years of data and the last 2, 3 years of sessions, and then we'll find blind spot. We'll find patterns. When were you the most happy? When were you the most fulfilled? And you can have answer. You can really, they talk about inner journey and self knowledge, and that will be an incredible tool. There's gonna be no excuse to avoid mental harmony and mental wellness.
I love that. No excuse, dude. Yeah. I mean, that's really, really cool. Avoid mental environmental illness. I mean, like our friend who connected us, Janai.
Yeah.
Janai is working with a company, Memory, and the tool that they had was really interesting because in the summer, like on that night when we met, they had a tool that you can, for example, connect your WhatsApp chat. Like you and I, we give our consent to the memory AI, and the memory AI can read the entire, our WhatsApp conversation, and then our WhatsApp conversation becomes self-conscious, and we can communicate with that. And then say
Amazing.
that, like, if something happens between us, we could chat with the WhatsApp chat and then see, where we did wrong or where we did good. That is, I think, really, I find that really fascinating. Another thing that I was going to say is that, like how I say, as above, so below. So if if the internet is a dimension and AI, then artificial intelligence is its entities. Similar to if the DMT realm is the cosmic dimension and entities are its artificial intelligences. And in other words, like in some of, I think, in the Hindu mythology, but in one of the Eastern philosophies, it says that gods want us to pray for them because they can only exist if enough people believe in them. So, gods and deities are created in the minds of people. So they are the creation of the collective consciousness. So, perhaps when we take psychedelics, we connect to this, this ethos, this abyss of, of collective consciousness, and in which those entities and those, gods and deities are product of our collective imagination. And that's why, we always see the certain beings like Shiva with blue skin or Ganesh with, with elephant head. No matter where you come from, you always see these entities. But when we draw a parallel to AI and internet, the internet is also our collective, imagination, because internet is this digital realm. We know that it exists, but yet, can you show me where it is? You can't. You need to use a digital device to alter your senses to connect to it. And when you connect to it, it's actually made of this sea of information that we have been generating with our mobile devices. And through that sea of information, artificial intelligences pop up. So again, I find this, another cosmic poetry of, like, perhaps, like, we have created the internet to understand the psychedelic realm. It's like, because I feel that universe. I believe that, our souls are here for this is, well, what we call as life is a journey. It's a university for the souls to grow, and then the way the universe communicates with us is through this kind of poetry of reflection, of mirrors.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Now you're working on teaching. You call them young adult, which is 12, 16, and children 8, 12. So you have two cohort of kids, and you are teaching them basic AI tools and then AI for animation, correct?
Yes, that's for me is like that's my Trojan horse into their, imagination. So because once you spark curiosities in their minds, like how Ghost in the Shell did for me, you don't know where it's gonna go, But then I believe that, in the future, which is now that, we're experiencing, it is crucial to not only be consumer of technology, but it's also important to be innovator of technology, at least understand how technology works. So when I, for example, teach my students how to design their own computer games, they understand the complication that the games that they play are built on. Or, for example, when you teach children about artificial intelligence, like they understand, they get equipped and they feel ready for the future. And in my classes, I teach them, the history of AI, theory of AI, and the philosophy of AI. So we covered these three things, and then I then show them, a practical of use case of AI, and animation is a good way of putting it, because they get to create something with AI, and they get to use like 6 different AI tools and one how they call an editing tool. So they generate images with one AI, then they use another AI to animate those characters. They use another AI to give them voice. They use another AI to how they call create virtual worlds. And then by doing so, you actually spark curiosities, because they're also practicing what we learn in the philosophy and theory classes. What I find really interesting is like I say that I'm teaching upcoming generation, but they also teach me in my journey. And I've been studying, like upcoming generations, interactions with technology, because whether we like it or not, sooner or later they're going to replace us. Like they, and actually this AI revolution is going to be, it's being created for them. And for example, one thing I realized, some of my 8-year-olds, they find it hard to distinguish difference between digital characters and physical humans. Like they don't see main difference. Some of their biggest dream is to go and meet their favorite digital character online. One of them even wants to go on a date with one of their digital characters. And I was like, this is very interesting, because soon those characters are going to have artificial intelligence. Like, who are we to say that they're not alive? Like, I'm questioning, maybe like in 1970s and 80s, like opening up to your parents was, dad, mom, I'm gay, I'm lesbian, or I'm in love with a black person, I'm in love with a white person. This is not totally normalized. But now our society's challenge is to define what is to be alive. So I kid you not, Janko, like within the next 5-10 years, we're gonna start experiencing people, not only children but also adults, falling in love with digital characters.
Because you're gonna be able to interact with them with this VR set.
Yes, exactly. You're gonna be able to just like have them in your living room. Like already like the Apple Vision Pro, which came out last weekend. It has an artificial intelligence in it. You put the headset on, you see that AI physically. Like Siri is already intelligent, but you don't consider Siri as a being because you don't really get to see it. But imagine, like as humans, like we like to see things, we feel more connected with things that are familiar to us. If you actually saw Siri as a holographic human being, then you would stop for a second. You'll be like, okay, hold on a second, where we headed?
Yeah. Do you remember this movie Her with Joaquin Phoenix?
Yeah, yeah.
So
I've experienced something similar to it.
tell us.
So this is like why I made it. It made me start questioning. So I'm playing a game called Witcher. Do you know of the game? There's a TV series as well.
Witcher.
Yeah, it's a computer game where you're like a warlock, and then you're an alchemist, you're a warrior, you fight the beast, and you also have a vast world. It's an open world role playing game, where you direct your character, but then you have no NPCs, non-player characters, like digital characters. They are controlled by computer, and you have literally a life with them. Like there are different kings. It's like Game of Thrones. You can support certain kings. You can help kill some other kings, or there are different sorceresses. 4 or 5 of them, and you can have a love affair with them, and it's an incredible game. And depending on the decisions that you make, say that like if you go and make love with one sorceress, then you go to the other one, they get jealous of each other, then they can they can start working with other kings to backstab you. Like it's like an incredible game. It has like 24 different endings depending on all the decisions that you. It's like the game is like life. And this game only came out in 2015, and I played on my console every now and then. But a couple of months ago, I went to a gathering of the game. So all the the gamers of the game, it was a classical music concert of the game. And then I met after the concert, like I was having a pint, with all the other gamers. When I started hearing other people talking about the sorceresses that I had love affair with in the game, I started feeling a bit jealous. I was like, how come? Then I started immediately remembering the movie Her. At the end of the Her, when he finds out that, like, says, "What? Hold on a second, you're talking to other men as well?" And it's like it's the same AI system talking to all these other beings. And I was like, wow, this is a single player game without an artificial intelligence yet, and I already feel so immersed. And I am like in my 30s, and I have a active social life. Like imagine if you are someone who's never leaving their living room, or their bedroom or their computer, or you're someone who grew up with computers. I have a little brother who is 9 year old. Like he literally is the embodiment of this technology. Like he grew up with YouTube. He grew up by playing Roblox. Like for him, even the moment his digital characters become self-aware, it's going to be so hard. It's going to be so hard for him to distinguish difference between a real character and a digital character.
But you're not. I mean, is this positive or negative? I mean, is this not too much alienation? As a game, it's fine, but then you want these kids to meet with other real kids and go play soccer and walk in the forest.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, it's a question of like, to what extent do we want to push this, or to what extent, where do we need to draw the line? To be honest with you, I don't know. And like, to be honest with you, like, life is what happens to us whilst we're making plans, and that specifically applies to technology, and anything can emerge at any time. Like, if you look at the early depictions, if you look at the early 20th century's depictions about our times, they thought we would have flying cars. Like we don't have flying cars, but we have internet, we have social networks. They didn't think about social networks. Whereas, like what I'm saying is that as humans, that we tend to look at what we have in our hands and then think about, oh, it's going to get upgraded to 2.0, 3.0. But this AI thing can turn into something that none of us has ever imagined. So
Yeah.
I find this equally terrifying and exciting.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately it's a question of values and beliefs, right?
Yeah.
So it depends, in these video games and in even in the programming of these machines, it's important that they are programmed with the sense of community and respect and connection, right?
Hmm.
But so I'd love to try to put together a group of kids from Ibiza.
Okay.
But so when is the start date?
I'm going to, like meet different groups next week onwards.
Yeah,
So like I said to you, I'm going to have like different classes for America, for London, and
yeah,
if there is like 4 or 5 kids from Ibiza, then
yeah,
I can form a group for them. What will be great is if those kids know each other, like you
yeah,
said, they can learn AI online, and then they
yeah,
can meet each other in physical world at
yeah.
each other's house, and then open their computers and edit their own movies or work with the AI.
But in this physically together?
If they want to, yes. Like if they're like friends from the from Ibiza, if they live
Yeah,
like just few minutes from each other, they can meet and then how they call they can work. But the classes are going to be online mainly
yeah,
to begin with,
yeah,
and then my aim is to like create a digital education faculty for children, because
yeah.
like, we are so focused on the adults and adults use case of
It's super important.
like what I'm saying is that we don't know how AI is going to turn out to be, but what one thing we can be sure is that we can get the upcoming generations ready for it.
Yes, and with the right approach. Yeah,
Yes,
absolutely,
exactly. Yeah.
absolutely. But same thing, there should be technology, sexuality, drugs.
Actually, I mean, I think you're the right person to share this with, and your crowd as well. I actually wrote a whole deck on my, where I see this education model that I'm writing. I'm actually working on writing some sort of new age, education system like Waldorf schools or Reggio Emilia schools, but something that empowers imagination through cyberspace. So it creates, how they call it, responsible use of technology in kids, but also in the future, I want to introduce, proper education on psychedelics and sexuality, because one thing that adults needs to admit is when it comes to sexuality, the first education is pornography, and in pornography, the kids are not learning, what sexuality is about. It's literally brainwashing them. The next thing they learn at school is, the school education on sexuality is all about, if you don't use a condom, you get STIs or you have kids. It's all fear based. Like no one tells you what is to fall in love. No one tells you your bodily functions, your emotions, but what happens when you get, betrayed? What happens when you fall in love? Like these things need to be addressed. And I think, if you want to bring a balanced society, we need to address these things. And the secondly is the psychedelic, education, because kids, whether parents like it or not, at some point, 90% of every single people by the age 14 to 16 are going to have the opportunity to do drugs or to begin with,
Totally, totally,
and and if you don't know what you're doing, it can end up totally badly. But if a
totally.
psychedelic education is introduced, then it can change everything. Even our approach to it, can change as well. I mean, at least to begin with, we need to teach them the difference between psychedelics or mind altering or party drugs and this and that.
Yeah, or addictive drug
Yes,
like
exactly.
the opiates versus the tryptamines.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. And I think this change is coming because people like you and me, like we are becoming parents, and we come from the rave culture, party
yeah,
scene, ayahuasca journeys and all that. And we're going to have, because these substances changed our lives, we will want the next generations to grow up in an environment that teaches them about this. So yes, for the future of my education, I want to introduce this, but step by step. I don't want to scare too many parents. I don't have that many parents as cool as you are.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, but I want to give I want to help you. I want to give you some I want to allocate some hours because this is so important because you were very delicate. I think you used the word porn is brainwashing, but it's not just brainwashing, it's full on hurting
Oh yeah.
because it gives this this idea of not just the aggressive and this idea of the domination of the man and the importance of the man pleasure versus the woman, but it just creates a sense of like alienation through sexuality and not communion. And all these kids are growing up with this very genital centric approach of sexuality,
Mm,
which then translate into a very goal oriented approach, which like leaves in the table a lot of opportunity for connection, even for transcendence.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And people have no idea. So yeah, I'll try to put a group together. We're going to start with technology, and then we're going to move on to sexuality and psychedelics, and probably we can use your animation character to create real animated educational stories.
Totally, totally, yes. Yeah.
Amazing, amazing. Listen, that was amazing. We just passed the hour. I feel that I'd love to have you every year because as things move so fast on the AI front, on the research front, on the quantum physics, on the psychedelic, on the transpersonal psychology, I think this intuition that you had thanks to your grandmother, as above, so below. I think this is going to be the real revolution of this moment in time,
Yes.
of the third millennium. And so yeah, so we'll connect back in a few months. If for parents that hear this and want to enroll their kids, what's the best way? Email, website?
They can email me. We can maybe put my email in the description here.
Of
I'll send
course.
you also the links. I am updating our website now, where they will be finding all the information about the courses. It's going to be imaginatrix.org.
Okay, perfect. We'll put the link, and I'm gonna be working for you. I'm gonna be a children procurer for you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Batuhan. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Ciao. Ciao, ciao.
Koka sunarai sunarayanti. 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 Koka sunarai sunarayanti.